Welcome to Fantasy Football Today, Dynasty. I am your host, Heath Cummings, and I know I owe some of you an apology. Some of you reached out to me last week. You said, "Where's FFT Dynasty?" Apparently, I didn't tell you that I was going to be in Las Vegas for FSGA. But what do you do when your kids are upset with you for being gone on a work trip? You bring them back a souvenir. I brought you back a souvenir. It's Joey Wright from Footballguys. This is going to be such a fun show. Joey is at Footballguys right now. Man, just tell us all what you've got going on.
Yeah, I feel like I'm like on the Heath Cummings path to success, starting over at Footballguys. I'm the community ambassador over at Footballguys. You'll see me in the Discord. We've got a Discord relaunch coming this Friday. Just trying to build that community up. You know, a lot of us got into fantasy because of that home league, those 11 guys or gals that we started a league with. We're trying to bring the focus back to there. And so that's why they brought me in to build that community up. During the season, though, I do host Footballguys Sunday Morning Live every Sunday from 11 to 12 with Jagger May and Jeff Bell and our injury expert, Adam Hutchinson. We did such a good job this year. They're giving us 90 minutes next year. And we've got some new segments. We got a weather guy. So lots of cool stuff coming from us with Footballguys. But this offseason, we're just kind of really building on the community. We do have the rookie draft guide out right now. 152 incoming rookies profiled in that draft guide. And it's free to download up until draft day. So definitely check that out. I think I plugged everything else.
152 rookies. Yes. We are going to talk just a tiny little bit about rookie drafts at the beginning of this show. The majority of this show, we're going to talk about free agents. So we're still a couple of weeks away from people being able to sign, although we're going to see some guys franchise tagged very shortly. And we've not really talked about some of these superstar free agents that are going to be available. I didn't really even think we were going to talk about Mike Evans. I had just assumed that Mike Evans was going to stay with Tampa Bay. And I know I'm hurting Joey right now. He's a Tampa Bay guy, but it sure sounds like they'd kind of set a deadline as of yesterday to get a deal reworked with him. I think Mike Evans is going to be a free agent. We'll also talk about T. Higgins, who I'm not sure is going to get to free agency, but he might. We'll talk about Baker Mayfield. And then we'll spend a lot of time on what is a monster running back class. There might be a dozen starting running backs available in free agency. I don't think a dozen of them are going to get starting jobs. Some of them are going to be no longer running backs in the NFL when we get to September of this year. And then at the end of the show, we're going to do something a little bit different. We have received quite a few emails with questions. Some grade the trade, some better questions than that. And so we're going to read your emails at the end of the show here with Joey. I'll just read the emails. Joey's going to answer them. How does that sound, Joey?
I'm prepared to answer emails. I'm used to that Q&A format. So I am very willing to do that. Whether my answers are good or not, that's what we're going to find out. So stay tuned.
That's answering emails absolutely sounds like something that the community ambassador should be adept at.
So many emails.
Of course, as always, we have to start with 3 questions for our guest. Joey, and I know you've listened to the show, or at least you've shown up in the chat. I don't know if you were actually listening to the show. You might have just been spamming the chat. But I always ask people this. You're starting a new dynasty league. What is the one rule or setting that for you is non-negotiable?
So I need there to be buy-in for the long haul. If I'm joining a dynasty league, I don't want to play redraft. If I'm committing to your dynasty league, I need to know that we're going to be together for a while. I think there's a good way you can do that is institute a 2-year buy-in. So you have your managers put up 2 years of dues right up front. The first dynasty league I ever joined in 2014 is still going today. So it's our 10th year now because we had a 2-year buy-in from the very beginning. And I think that's a really good way. If you're not doing money, just vet your members. Make sure you know who you're joining your dynasty league with because you're going to be spending a lot of time with these people.
I really appreciate the fact that I didn't have to say other than Superflex, because almost everybody that I asked that question to, the first thing that just comes to their mind, we're all Superflex snobs. It seems like Superflex comes out. I love that though. Like you do need the buy-in. I think Scott Fish has talked about this a lot in the last 6 months, that he thinks the biggest problem in Dynasty right now is people joining startups, playing it like a redraft league, winning, and then leaving after year 1. We don't want to do that. The best thing you can do is if you can be in a league with people you actually know, people you're in some sort of relationship with, that definitely gets the buy-in going. Question number 2. So we are prepping for rookie drafts. You talked about the Footballguys rookie draft guide. That's a great way to do it. But there's not enough time to do everything we need to do to evaluate all of these players. Like there's film to watch, there's analytics to check out, there's statistical profiles to analyze. And then, of course, there's other people's opinions. We're going to have a lot of those people on the show over the next 3 months. Definitely some more football guys. How do you divide your time up in sort of evaluating these prospects?
So I used to be a strictly analytics guy. Like I would just look at the numbers, and I realized like I call kind of the busy Abanikanda rule, where you can't just look at the numbers. You got to kind of look at some more. And last year, Alfredo Brown over Footballguys really challenged me to start watching more film. And he actually recommended, he goes, take the rookie draft guide, take that 1 paragraph snapshot, and then watch film according to that snapshot. And that was truly the way that I was really analyzing these rookies coming in last year. And I found it to be a great process. It's what I'm going to do this year. I was kind of waiting for that Footballguys rookie draft guide to come out. I'm a company man. What can I say? But really any rookie draft guide, grab that draft guide and then go to the film. I found that process worked really well for me last year. So that's how I like to look at them.
I think that, and I did want to ask though, like what's behind you?
This is my film collection. I used to be a film critic.
You were a film critic who didn't watch film.
I know, right? Isn't that kind of funny? Isn't that kind of, yeah. No, it's 1,200 movies back there. Yeah.
That's fantastic. No, I think that's, and it's also good to know yourself. Like, what are you good at? Are you good at parsing a lot of information and going through several different experts and deciding who makes the best case? Are you good at watching film and seeing what this guy should have done? Or are you good at looking at the analytics? And so I would tell people, like, whatever you think you're better at, spend more time on that and then let other people do some of the heavy lifting on the other stuff. But I definitely agree with Alfredo. Like, you need a good mix of both film and analytics. Mm-hmm. Question number 3, there are like a dozen starting running backs on the free agent market. Give me one guy that you are confident is going to be good for fantasy football next year who currently does not have a team.
So Saquon Barkley was in the list of players that I could pull from, mm-hmm. and that would be the one that I'm most comfortable with, because I'm sorry, Adam Azer, on the Giants, he wasn't in the best situation, and he's still one of the best running backs in the league. Last year, over 1,200 total yards from scrimmage, and what some could consider a down year. I feel like even if he ends up back on the Giants, we'll see Saquon Barkley again. But if he goes somewhere, there's a better situation. I don't want to say the Dallas Cowboys, but if he were to slop into that spot, that could be a pretty great situation for Saquon. I feel really safe with him. I think whatever we're getting from him is going to be great.
I do think it's interesting because I saw a report yesterday. Both Saquon and the Giants would like to stay together. But that doesn't necessarily mean what it sounds like, because Saquon would like to stay with the Giants and be paid what he thinks he's worth. And the Giants would like to keep Saquon and pay him what they would pay a rookie running back. And so they still have to come together on what those terms are going to be. I do agree with you. Like, let's just send him to Dallas. Then the problem with that is his ADP will probably grow too much, or his dynasty value will probably grow too much, and he'll turn into a sell because people will be excited about what he could do. And he's still at the age. And that's the thing with these rookie running backs. I think all of them besides Josh Jacobs have already turned at least 26. Most of them are going to be 27, 28. Mm-hmm. Derrick Henry's already 30. These guys, even if they weren't changing teams, it would be time to be concerned about them, or in the case of several of them, past time. Let's take a short break, and then we'll start to get into the free agent class. Okay, Joey, we're back, and I want to just kind of work off of Tyler Sullivan's list. He did a list of the top 50 free agents at CBSSports.com. You can find that on the site, of course. Now, he didn't prioritize these in the order of their fantasy value. He prioritized them in the value in terms of their NFL value, which I think this time of year might actually be more helpful, because there are some running backs who we might think of this guy really matters. Well, those are often the guys that end up waiting until August to find a deal, because the NFL doesn't value them in the same way. So we're going to go off Tyler's list. The number 2 free agent on Tyler Sullivan's list was Kirk Cousins, which I thought was interesting. He coming off of the torn Achilles, didn't do the Aaron Rodgers, I might come back this year drama, but I would expect they're on a relatively similar timeline. We're expecting Cousins to play in 2024. When it first happened, I thought, okay, Kirk Cousins is going to go play somewhere else, and it's not going to be near as good for him. And then it was, I don't know if it was week 7, week 8, week 9. It was sometime after that when Justin Jefferson was on the sideline and he was wearing a Kirk Cousins t-shirt and he had all the chains, like the video of Kirk Cousins last year, like in memory of Cousins. And knowing that Kirk Cousins was still going to come back and play football, I thought, well, that might mean that Jefferson wants Cousins back, which probably means that Cousins is coming back. Are you leaning towards him being on the Vikings this year?
Yeah, I don't think he ends up anywhere else. I mean, if he anywhere else, it would be Atlanta. I would say would be a decent fit, but I do believe Minnesota loves him. He was on pace to break, what is his career high in passing yards and touchdowns last year. But you were mentioning like Justin Jefferson on the sideline. Kirk Cousins never really left that sideline for the Vikings last season. He was out there during their holiday charity drives. And it's that kind of stuff that's like, okay, you're ingrained in the culture. Like, I love seeing that out of Kirk Cousins. I think if you play Dynasty the way I like to play in kind of a 3-year window, Kirk Cousins is the perfect quarterback target to go out and grab. He might only have 3 or 4 seasons left in the league at high production value. But if you get him now, he can help you win a championship or be solid for the next few years. I'd like him as my QB2. But if I have to have him as my QB1, I think I could settle for that.
Yeah, I think you look at him in 2024 as a borderline QB1.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at him in Dynasty definitely as a QB2, but someone who is probably cheaper to buy right now than he will be if he signs a 2-year deal with the Vikings, because then everybody will know that he has Justin Jefferson for the next 2 years. You mentioned Atlanta, and I'm going to swerve off script in the first 12 minutes of the show. I told you it was a free-flowing show. So I saw that Justin Fields has unfollowed the Bears on Instagram and is following Kyle Pitts and Drake London. Are we supposed to care about this?
I care about it. I love it. I truly, like, I don't think, maybe I'm the one that's going to spearhead narrative analysis because, like, revenge games, things like that. There's something to it. I totally buy into it. Maybe like I've watched JFK and I'm a conspiracy theorist way too much, but I buy into every little thread I see.
So I actually talked to Mark Andrews during the season last year, and I asked him about several of our narratives. Most of them he shot down in a very unfun way. He did confirm that the revenge game is 100% a thing. And so welcome to believe in that one and actually factor that one into the projections. At number 4, Tyler had T. Higgins, another guy who I'm not sure if he's going anywhere. But let's just talk for a moment as if he was. How much would that impact your evaluation, or does it, of Joe Burrow? And I think it's kind of the same thing if we view T. Higgins on a franchise situation. I don't think they're signing him to a new contract. Like, if they keep him, they're keeping him for one more year. Let's see if we can run it back one more year. We've only seen Burrow with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon, sure, a bad offensive line. Are we sure he's going to be just as good if Higgins leaves either this offseason or next offseason?
I think Burrow is fine. I think he's, and for my book, he's still like a top 7 dynasty quarterback. Mm-hmm. I'm not worried about Burrow. As far as Higgins, actually with Burrow missing time last year, made me feel a little bit better about Higgins because Higgins kind of thrived with Jake Browning.
Yeah. I think you said top 7, and there was a period of time where you might have gotten booed for saying top 7 because a lot of people had Joe Burrow as a top 3 or 4 dynasty quarterback. He's my number 6 quarterback right now. Okay. I have a hard time with what to do with Higgins, even in the circumstance that we're expecting that he receives the franchise tag, doesn't go anywhere this year. We have had a really checkered past of wide receivers like him going to a new team with a worse quarterback and getting a big contract.
He seems like the type of free agent, though, that if he goes somewhere, like, they're going to get tagged, like you said. But if he were to go to the Chiefs or to the Bills, like, I don't think he's going to be leaving for a competitive destination, in my mind.
At some point, we are going to get to players that are actually going to change teams. I am not sure that it's going to be this third player we're going to talk about. Number 10 on Tyler Sullivan's list of NFL free agents, Michael Pittman, 26-year-old wide receiver who just had a very good year. But you do wonder how much of that had to do with the fact that Anthony Richardson got hurt and he had Gardner Minshew, and so the offense wasn't quite as run-centric as they had thought it would be. I've got Pittman around wide receiver 20 in Dynasty, between 20 and 25. I'm, again, anticipating that he's either going to sign a deal with the Colts or he's going to be franchise tagged. That could be wrong. Are you expecting him to remain a Colts? And do you think that low-end number 2 wide receiver range is about right?
I think the low-end wide receiver 2 range is about right. I have, Michael Pittman's always been a wide receiver that's just been outside that 12 for me. And I'm just like, what is it going to take for him to bump me up? And maybe I just like previews because I like movies, but I got that 4-game, and it wasn't even a full 4-game preview with Andy Richardson. And that did give me a little bit of confidence in him. Well, we have 3 seasons now where, Michael Pittman's averaging 140 targets per season. I'm not sure how much of that goes away with Shane Steichen there. I would love for them to develop into this great, like Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen relationship. Do we see that? I don't know, but I think Michael Pittman's going to stay in Indianapolis for sure.
All right. So the top 3, I agree. Kirk Cousins, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman likely returning to their locations. Now we get to see Joey cry. Mike Evans, seriously. 30 years old, will be 31 next year. That's the way age works. Just had one of the best age 30 seasons I can remember. And I'm just going to put your mind at ease because I know you see all this Chiefs stuff behind me. Apologies. I don't have my new Chiefs Super Bowl pennant. I just got this one like 6 months ago, but it's outdated now because oops, they won another Super Bowl.
Oh darn.
I don't think he's going to Kansas City. Okay. I really don't. But I do think he's going somewhere. Mike Evans appears to want a big payday, and that does not seem to be going to happen in Tampa Bay. Any thoughts on where he's going? And he's certainly risky at this age, right?
He is. And I mean, you have the 10 seasons in a row with 1,000 yards. If you follow me on X or Twitter, I mean, every week I was saying Mike Evans is a Hall of Fame wide receiver. And I think that narrative's put to rest now. I think everyone agrees. Great. Okay, yes. He's going to go in the Hall of Fame. He has this opportunity now to be one of the greats, if you ask me. If he puts together another 3 seasons and wins in 2 Super Bowls because he picks the right what's the phrase? Because we know that I'm not good with phrases with pigeonholed. Is it hitch to the right horse? You hitch your wagon to the right horse. Did I get that one right?
Close enough.
Okay. Yeah. If Mike Evans hitches his wagon to the correct horse, he could be one of the all-time greats. So you say he's not going to the Chiefs. I'll concede that. What other teams are out there ready to contend? I mean, does the 49ers make sense if they move on from Brandon Ayuk and they can get him on a smaller contract? If he wants a big payday, I don't know. So I still think it's probably going to be the Chiefs, though. I think they want to reward Patrick Mahomes. I know he wants a big payday, but
I probably said this last year. Thankfully, I didn't have a Dynasty show, so I wouldn't have said it on air. But I do think I'm viewing Evans as a sell right now, just because it seems like there's one of 2 things he's going to prioritize, and it's going to be money or it's going to be rings. And I don't know that either of those are going to lead to more targets than what he saw in Tampa Bay this most recent year. And we've seen it with several wide receivers. Like you get to this age and he might only be 1 year away, or he might be 2 years away. You may get lucky and get 3 more years, but it's very likely that the cliff is right around the corner. Now, at the same time, he's 30 years old. It might be that you can't sell until he signs with someone, and then somebody gets really excited about that. Where would you put Evans in terms of a dynasty wide receiver ranking? Is he a wide receiver 3 for you now just because of the age?
Because of the age and because of how long you'll get to keep him, he's a high-end wide receiver 3 for me. Mm-hmm. Like I mentioned about Kirk Cousins, like if you need to go out and win now or you're playing in a 3-year window, this is the kind of wide receiver I'm targeting right now. If I can get Mike Evans on the cheap and I like, you know what, I'm going to rebuild out in a couple of years. Mike Evans is the kind of wide receiver I want. Would you feel that way too if he ended somewhere you like?
Yeah, like there's some older wide receivers, and I was just kind of looking at where I have him ranked relative to them. I'm a little lower than you. I have him as a low-end wide receiver 3. I've got him 2 spots behind Cooper Kupp. I've got him 1 spot ahead of Amari Cooper. Those guys are all 30. I've got him just ahead of Calvin Ridley and Devontae Adams.
Where's Keenan Allen?
And Keenan Allen actually, and he's an interesting one that we probably don't talk about the risk with him enough. Mm-hmm. Because it is a new coaching staff that's likely going to go more run heavy, and his contract situation could make him end up on this free agent list. But as of right now, I'm projecting him with Justin Herbert and on the Chargers, and so he is ahead of all of these guys.
Okay, and I agree with that. I think Keenan Allen
but I think he and Kupp are the only wide receivers who are already 30 who are ahead of Evans. Tyreek Hill going to turn 30 if he hasn't already. I think he's going to do it this offseason, and he would also be ahead of Evans, obviously. But yeah, it's a tough spot, and it really just depends. In terms of selling, can you find that contender who wants to go make that purchase right now, like you said. Otherwise, you might be holding him until end season, and that does provide some risk in terms of what happens the first few weeks on his new team. At number 18, and this is an interesting one. I was shocked to see Marquise Brown basically the same age as Michael Pittman. Things were supposed to go much better when he left the run-heavy Baltimore offense and went to Arizona to play with his best friend, or at least former quarterback, in Kyler Murray. Marquise Brown's a guy who I think could end up on the Kansas City Chiefs, kind of the high-end option, if it's not the low-end option of Gabe Davis. This is one I think where the value in terms of the NFL is much different in terms of the value in terms of fantasy. You could probably buy him for a late 2024 second right now, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think my hope with Marquise Brown is he doesn't end up on the Cardinals, because Trey McBride breakout second half of the season. And it does seem like Marvin Harrison Jr. most likely is going to end up on the Cardinals. I feel like that's where you see most mocks sending him. So now you've got Marquise Brown as the third best option. And if you want him to return back to where he was in 2021 with over 1,000 receiving yards, it doesn't really seem like it's going to be Arizona. So I kind of hope he does move on. Chiefs would be, of course, a great destination. If he were to go there, his value would go up. But where he's at right now with Arizona, I don't see him much more than as a wide receiver 3.
I definitely think if he's on your roster, he is somebody to hold right now. His value has moved in the wrong direction, and there are several outs to where things could look a lot better for him in just a couple of months. If you want to try to buy cheap, I don't hate that idea either. If you're a young, it's hard to find the right situation, because a contender, I'm not sure you're buying him, and a rebuilder, a 26-year-old wide receiver, it's just kind of okay in terms of the age situation. Let's go to one more before our second break here, and it's your quarterback. I don't know if he's your quarterback anymore. Baker Mayfield, the man who destroyed DJ Moore and my rankings 2 years ago, and then showed up in Tampa Bay and really, really delivered what I expected him to do in 2022. Fantastic season last year with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. They brought in an offensive coordinator from the Rams that Baker apparently approves. So it seems like they're trying to bring Baker back. But if they do, and it's Chris Godwin and Trey Palmer as his top 2 targets, is he even a low-end number 2 quarterback?
I think he's a low-end number 2. I don't think he's going to finish as a QB1 or even sniff at it like he did this year. Top 15 might be in the realm of possibilities. I don't think Trey Palmer is awful. I think he could definitely put something together. But Cade Otton seems to be the name that nobody wants to mention. Him and Baker Mayfield really seem to kind of get on the same page. I do think if there's any hope of Mike Evans coming back to Tampa Bay, it's this Baker Mayfield relationship that they built this year. You've heard both of them speak so highly of each other. Maybe I'm just buying into that too much because I want it to happen. I want Mike Evans to stay a Buccaneer for life. But listen, the Buccaneers are a team that, and I know we had Brady, never really thrived with the best quarterback in the league. We always got by with defense. So Baker, for me, seems like the perfect fit for a Buccaneers offense. Sign Baker and build that defense back up to get back to what we know. And in the meantime, I think Baker's definitely serviceable. If Chris Godwin's there, I think they can build up a good relationship. I mean, they already kind of have a little bit, but it's not QB1 numbers. It's super flex QB2.
Yeah, I just wonder, and I'm going to veer off again with my Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan, because you got a couple of teams in this division. Obviously, the Panthers are just lost in the wilderness. I don't know when the hope is for the Panthers, and the Falcons are just hoping that the coach and the QB change or the thing that really sets things loose for them. And then you get the Saints and Tampa Bay that seem like they are just hanging on by a thread of really, from my perspective, an unrealistic thread. Like, it's already snapped. You just don't know it yet. You're falling. The thread's in your hand, but it's over. Are you at all ready for a rebuild?
I don't want to say rebuild. I guess I've always felt like the NFC South, as you hung out in the FSGA, I like college basketball, and I always feel like the NFC South's a mid-major. Like, we're never bringing the best team to the playoffs, but somehow we win a game. Like, we beat the Eagles this year. And when I was in Vegas, someone's like, "Oh, how excited are you? You guys beat the Eagles?" And I was like, "Did we really, or did the Eagles kind of beat themselves earlier in the week than, you know?"
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm ready for a rebuild. I think to win the NFC South, I think we have the pieces that are in place. I think improve our defense. I do think Atlanta's probably going to win that division next year. I think Tampa Bay's won it 3 years in a row now.
I appreciate you sliding that in there. Is this reflect at all on your strategy as a dynasty fantasy football manager? Are you also a hanger-oner and trying to avoid the inevitable rebuild?
Probably. Yeah, that 2014 Dynasty League, I think I won 2 out of the first 4 seasons, and then I've just been hanging on. And like my quarterback position's decimated, and no one will trade with me because I won the first 2 championships.
Right.
And now I do this for a living, and they all think I know something, which listen, I really don't.
But that is the curse of home leagues when you work in this industry. Absolutely. But I think it's good for people to hear from somebody who is just always fighting to keep competing, because I talk a lot on this show about first or worst. It's kind of the Ricky Bobby strategy. And that's not necessarily for everyone. Some people absolutely hate the idea that I'm going to sell everything, and for the next 2 years, I'm going to be terrible, and then I'm going to have a great team again. Some people would like to just keep churning, and there's definitely more than one way to skin a cat. That's the term, right?
I think, yeah, that is the term. Yeah. I think you have to worry about how bad your last place punishment is in the league.
Okay.
If you play that first or worst style, like my punishment in my main home league, like I've made the playoffs with 15 years, not 14 out of 15 years, because I never want that last place punishment. It's just awful, and it affects our home lives. Like I don't want that.
That's a fair distinction. Let's take one more short break, and at some point we got to talk about running backs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Joey, we are back. We are not quite ready to talk about running backs. Coming in at number 6 on terms of our list, or 7, but number 20 on Tyler Sullivan's list, Calvin Ridley. This is one of the guys that I kind of feel like maybe, sometimes you puff your chest out a little bit. I was right about him last year, but I have no idea what to think about him this year. Jacksonville talking like they want to bring him back. I'm not really sure I understand why that didn't work, and you just lost to CJ Stroud, who in his rookie year, like you need to make some improvements to that team. Ridley didn't quite look like the same guy, but also, I mean, what did the guy have? 18 almost touchdowns, seemingly always standing in the end zone with one foot out of bounds, catching the ball or bobbling it as he runs out of bounds. Ridley's already 29. All that time that he missed, he's aged. Like this was definitely a test of whether people worry more about the tread on the tire because he's missed a lot of games, or the age. I worry a lot more about the age. Another guy here where I think he's, like I said, a number 3 wide receiver, just barely. He's behind Mike Evans for me. Do you have more optimism for Ridley? And do you kind of expect him to just stay in Jacksonville?
I don't really expect him to stay in Jacksonville. Ridley's the kind of player I don't like to have on my teams because he's so boomer bust. Last year, 6 games with over 19 PPR fantasy points. He averaged almost 25 PPR fantasy points per game in those games. The other 11, though, he only averaged 7.4 fantasy points per game. I don't like that much of a boom and bust, even as my wide receiver 3. So I usually avoid guys like Calvin Ridley. If you can find a manager in your league that likes those guys, sell them away. And if I have to have a Jaguars receiver, I want Christian Kirk.
100%. So we agree completely on the Kirk Ridley dynamic. But I think everybody in the chat probably knowing, well, Heath's that guy. You can sell him the boom bust wide receivers because those are my kind of guys. And that's what makes this game so much fun, is that there are, like, you do have to know the managers in your league and know what types of players they're after. Now, I have to say, I wasn't particularly fond of Ridley this year. He's not, by the time we add the rookies in, he's not going to be a top 40 dynasty wide receiver for me. So I'm not really excited about adding him, but maybe when he returns to Jacksonville, a small sell window opens up. He's just the type of guy that I'm not sure there's elite upside for 2024, and I'm not sure there's a 3-year window for starter production. That does it with the top 7 free agents on Tyler Sullivan's list. We have to get all the way down to number 31 to get to a running back. And that makes sense. Running backs in the NFL do not possess the same value that they used to, or they do, and the league just figured out how much value they actually possess. And it's kind of getting that way in fantasy football as well. I just tweeted this morning about John Bosch's strategy of just do not roster running backs. You can roster running backs when you get to November or December. Like if you make the playoffs, then maybe you should add a couple of running backs. Not all of our leagues are without trade deadlines, of course. But Saquon Barkley does come in at number 31. He was also the guy that you chose as the most likely to be productive. Let's say he doesn't go back to the Giants. He doesn't go to Dallas, which kind of seems unlikely to me. I think he's going to one of those two places. Is there anywhere else where you'd be excited about him? And is maybe a better question, like, is there anything that could cause you to say, nope, never mind, I'd rather have this free agent running back?
If Barkley were to go to a team that was just like one piece away from having it all, like Houston Texans. You think of Barkley going to the Houston Texans, they've got everything else. I love the receiving core, great young quarterback, defense is good. I like Dalton Schultz. I know we're going to talk about him a little bit as a tight end. Offensively, they seem like they're one piece away. Right. I'd be really excited for him. I honestly, unless he goes into a crowded backfield, I cannot think of a team that Barkley goes to. Like maybe if he went to Atlanta, I would be so upset because I want Bijan to break out. And that's an Atlanta thing.
Arthur Smith's not there anymore. It's okay.
That's right. He's gone.
Arthur Smith's gone. Maybe he goes to Pittsburgh and Arthur Smith has Najee and Jalen Warren and Saquon. No, I think you like the what you really meant to say, and Adam's not here, which is why you didn't say it probably, but there's not a situation worse than the Giants. He's going to go to a team
I don't think there is.
that scores fewer points and throws to their running backs list. Yeah, he's almost certainly going to have a situation upgrade. It's just whether he can hold up. Now, I probably would have put Josh Jacobs ahead of Barkley in terms of dynasty value. He is right after Barkley on Tyler's list. It's funny. He had no running backs in the top 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, all running backs, which I think makes sense. Like the guys that you were actually interested in where they go, there's not a whole lot of difference. I'd love to see Jacobs go to Dallas. That'd be a fantastic situation. I'd be okay if he stays in Las Vegas on the Raiders because I think they're going to be a play defense and run type of team. He's really only had one spectacular season, but he's also still just 25 years old. So this guy, if he goes and lands a 3-year deal now, I'm sure somebody's going to bring up Miles Sanders because that was my big miss last year, and he has a similar profile. But I definitely think he's a guy who sticks around in that RB20 range, right?
Yeah, I don't think last year he was kind of sniffing that RB1 range because of what happened in 2022 with 393 touches that he had in 2022. And going to 2023, there's a lot of history with 350 total carries for running backs. And some of them fall off. Not everyone's Sean Alexander. You know, they can't have this miraculous season the following year. But Las Vegas seems committed to him. And that's what makes me excited for him. But I don't think he's going to sniff that RB1 territory like he was before. He does seem like an RB2 on your team. If you have him as an RB2 and the workload he's going to get, I think that's a really good situation to have him in.
Right. You hope he goes somewhere where he gets to handle the passing downs because that's kind of been the differentiator for him. When they're throwing him the ball, he's extremely valuable. And he talked about the fact that he absolutely thought that his holdout hindered his production early in the year. It took him a while to get going.
Could have been.
And we had somebody on FFT last fall actually that speculated that the running backs that hold out takes a little while to get going. So maybe he does bounce back to the type of efficiency that we saw 2 years ago. It's really going to, for all these running backs, it's going to depend on landing spot. The next running back on the list, Tony Pollard, who is, I loved to bring this up last year because Tony Pollard has always been older than Josh Jacobs, but certainly does not seem like he's older than Josh Jacobs. I'm not sure Tony Pollard gets a starting running back deal. Now, again, there was the qualification with Jacobs that the holdout hampered him. Pollard said he wasn't healthy until week 11 this year from the prior season's injury. But when you have a guy who was a backup running back for so long, got the chance to be the feature guy and performed at a much lower level, I feel like he's headed straight to a committee.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect fit for him. And I think he can actually be productive in a committee because we've seen him do it before. If he goes somewhere where they already kind of have a bruising running back and they can kind of put him in that passing down role, we're going to talk about another guy later that I like a little bit more for that type of a fit. But Tony Pollard's definitely someone that I could have on my dynasty roster, be okay with. But he's not a top 5 running back like a lot of people, myself included, were ranking him coming into last year because he had that Dallas Cowboy, lead back role. He's not that running back. He does need to be in a committee. I think that's a perfect fit for him, though, to be efficient. Last year, his stats were almost the exact same as 2022, but he had 75 less total touches. So get him in a committee, and he actually just be really efficient to be productive for your fantasy team.
Real quick, right? Because I think these three kind of belong in a tier of their own. Rank Jacobs, Barkley, and Pollard for dynasty purposes.
I still would have Barkley, Jacobs, then Pollard.
Okay, and I've got it Jacobs, Barkley, then Pollard, and I feel like Pollard is the riskiest of the three.
Ooh, absolutely.
I think a big point is that the thing we don't know, the riskiest of the three is probably the guy who's going to refuse to accept the contract. Like what happens is one of these guys is going to think, no, I'm worth $10 million a year. And then they're going to be sitting there in August waiting for somebody to get hurt. And so I'll feel much better almost across the board with the free agent running backs, the guys that sign sooner. So you don't have that risk that they turn into, it was Dalvin Cook last year. Now it worked out once with your team, Leonard Fournette. He waited around until camp and then things worked out okay. I want to combine the next two guys on the list, and definitely more valuable for 2024 NFL purposes than for dynasty purposes, because Derrick Henry, already 30 years old, Austin Ekeler, already 28, definitely going to turn 29 before the season starts. Henry at least still looked like himself last year. Ekeler experienced a major drop-off. Don't really expect either of these guys to be with their current team or their teams from last year. Do you think either of them could be a full feature back, or would the best case scenario would be they agree to take smaller deals and just go combine into the best backfield ever?
I think in Derrick Henry's situation specifically, if he goes somewhere with like a mobile quarterback with like a Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson, I think that's the perfect kind of fit where they don't need him to run 25 times a game, where he can run 16 to 18 times a game and be extremely productive. Because you just tell Derrick Henry, I mean, they did it last year in Tennessee. They dropped his carries down. It was the first time he's been under 20 carries a game.
Right.
And he was still pretty efficient with what they gave him. So I think if he goes to a situation like that, or maybe they have a true passing down back or a mobile first quarterback, I think Derrick Henry can be productive for like the next 2 years. I can't even say a 3-year window. I should stop saying he's done, because he just keeps proving me wrong and everybody wrong.
Yeah, not just you.
Yeah.
No, I'm more concerned that one of these guys ends up without a starting job than I am the first three, for sure. Probably more concerned that's Ekeler than Henry. I could see Ekeler just in a passing downs role. I also think if either one of them signs early in the offseason, I'm trying to sell. And if these are the types of guys that you think I want to target them for my contender, I'm waiting until the trade deadline. Because with the amount of touches they've handled with their age, there's significant injury risk. And I don't want to trade a draft pick for them in July, and week 3 they're hurt and they don't help my contender when we're contending. So not buys at all. Definitely sells if a good landing spot enhances their value. We got a couple more guys here left in the top 53, in fact. We'll be real short with Gabe Davis, who's somehow still just 24 years old. I loved his goodbye to Buffalo. That was, I think, supposed to be really nice, and then ends with him featuring all of his stats that he's led the NFL in and showing that he's like 86th in target rate. Gabe Davis wants some more targets. Now, I thought he was the perfect guy to put next to Rashee Rice and just send Gabe Davis deep over and over, but he might be done with being on the blocking and cardio team.
I have to be extremely careful what I say about Gabe Davis, because he is my daughter's. It was her preschool teachers. It's her nephew. And so the last time I said something bad about Gabe Davis, got back to him. And now my daughter is a year back from all of her friends.
Perfect.
So she's still not started kindergarten yet, because I said one thing about Gabe Davis. No, I'm kidding. My opinion of him really hasn't changed, though. He does seem like he's boom bust. And I've said it before, I'm not a huge fan of these boom bust guys.
Right.
And if he gave us goodbye to Buffalo, that's good, because he might have been the 4th best option in Buffalo now if he were to stay there. So
I thought you were going to be nice to Gabe Davis. Good grief. So definitely somebody that you're hoping, you probably don't have him on your roster, but you're hoping a little bit of steam from a signing and go trade him away.
Yes. Yeah. But I would trade him away if I have him on my team. Wide receiver, he needs to be my 5th best wide receiver is where I'm at.
That's true even if my completely unbased speculation about the Chiefs pairing him up with Mahomes and Rashee Rice.
the thing, if anyone goes to the Chiefs, their value shoots up. So it would change a lot. I mean, that's such a very unique and wonderful situation for anyone that falls into that.
We have 2 tight ends in the top 50, Dalton Schultz and Hunter Henry. Henry's 29, Schultz is 27. For some reason, I really thought Houston gave him more than a 1-year deal. Things started really pretty well for Schultz in Houston, but it was an interesting situation there all year long. It didn't seem like we ever had everybody healthy at the same time. And so I am very skeptical if he decides to go back to Houston and Nico Collins and Tank Dell are able to play 17 games, that Schultz is going to see very many targets at all. He's kind of one of those guys who has proven without a doubt he is good enough, if you are going to throw him the ball 100 times, to be a top 10 fantasy tight end. He's also, I don't think, good enough to demand targets if you have really good wide receivers.
Correct. The area that I think Dalton Schultz thrives in, it's where his stat line's at, is in the red zone. Like he loves being targeted in the red zone. And that's, and sometimes in a tight end situation, if you don't got a Laporta, you don't got a Kelsey, you don't got a Andrews, McBride, you don't have one of those top tier tight ends, Dalton Schultz falling down in the end zone to get you 6 points, that might be all you need that week. So in those situations, I'm okay with Schultz, especially if I'm going to wait on like a Brock Bowers or one of the younger tight ends like from the Packers. Like, I'm okay rostering him, but I don't think he's anyone we can move forward with.
And I don't really want to talk about Hunter Henry.
I was hoping I didn't write anything down for him.
You don't need to write anything down for Hunter Henry. We're going to avoid Hunter Henry. If he's still on your team, it's too late to sell him. You should have sold him when he signed the contract with the Patriots, probably. We're not interested in that. There are 4 running backs who, for good reason, didn't make Tyler's list of the top 50 most important free agents in the NFL because they're running backs and they're maybe not starting running backs. Although I think one of them might surprise people. And that's DeAndre Swift. I was just looking at my running back rankings from a year ago. He was my RB8. I think like 15 months ago, he was a consensus top 5 dynasty running back. Things didn't go quite as planned in Philadelphia. And I think we have to accept now probably that DeAndre Swift is not a workhorse running back. He's not somebody who's going, but I do want to know, do you think there's any hope that he can get back to what he was at last year in Detroit when he was healthy? And like you said with Tony Pollard, maybe it's 220 touches.
Yeah.
But he just goes bananas in terms of efficiency.
Does the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles like DeAndre Swift? Because that was his problem in Detroit, from what I've heard, is Dan Campbell just wasn't a huge Swift fan. Right. I think the best situation for Swift would be if somebody does come in for this early down work and he does return into that receiving downs back that we thought he was going to be from the beginning, that he is very good at. So I do think that would be the best situation for him. So I agree with you on that.
But he has to go somewhere where they're going to throw to their running backs, because that's just not something generally mobile quarterbacks are going to do. And it's definitely not something that Jalen Hurts has done very much. I don't know what the plan exactly is going to be in Michigan, in Los Angeles for the Chargers. It's basically Michigan now. Ever since that hiring happened, I just assumed they're going to draft Blake Corum in round 3 and hand the ball off to him 350 times. But going somewhere with a sledgehammer, you're right, where he gets to run the ball on third downs and catch 60 passes and average 5.5 yards per carry. I think that's the ideal situation. I do still have him because, again, another guy who's young like Jacobs, I still view him as kind of a borderline number 2 running back, but certainly like Pollard, a lot of risk there over the next couple of months. 3 more guys. I'll group these guys together in really an odd grouping, but they're all free agents and they all have very uncertain futures. Devin Singletary, who just destroyed Dameon Pierce in the past 12 months. That hurt.
Can we talk about that?
I don't want to. I don't want to tell you where I had Dameon Pierce ranked a year ago.
I believe me, I had a pink t-shirt with like 17 faces of Dameon Pierce. I'm a huge Dameon Pierce fan. Like, is the door closed? Because
for Dameon Pierce?
Yes. Is it closed?
I do think it's more interesting to talk about Dameon Pierce than Devin Singletary, for sure.
That's what when I saw Devin Singletary's name on here, I was like, I know what he is, but did we just have a long hangover from Dameon Pierce that 2022 season where he came out in 10 games and looked like truly one of the best rookie running backs in the league. Was it just a rough year last year? And maybe he can bounce back, because Devin Singletary did seem like an insurance policy if Dameon Pierce couldn't make it back on the field, which he did not. But
the people who were smarter than me last off season, I know this because it's proven true, said that Dameon Pierce didn't fit the system that they were going to run in Houston very well. And that Devin Singletary, while he wasn't necessarily as talented, fit the system better. And I think we saw that bear out over the season. So the hope for Dameon Pierce is probably that he gets cut.
Okay.
And maybe even gets cut in your fantasy football league. And then you could pick, like, I'm not trading for Dameon Pierce. And I'm trying to hold him probably until September just to make sure. But I don't think in Houston, like, if that coaching staff prefers Devin Singletary, and if Devin Singletary can flat out be better in that system, then I don't have much hope for Dameon Pierce in that system.
Just as someone that has him on pretty much every dynasty roster, just hanging there in the IR.
He's definitely, like, one thing we're gonna have to talk about in the next couple of months is guys on that cut line, because I've got leagues that have 3 rookie picks. I've got leagues that have 8 rookie picks, and you got to clear those roster spots in my leagues before the draft happens. I'm going to do what I can to not cut Dameon Pierce. And if somebody does cut him, he's someone I'm going to be looking to try to pick back up off the garbage pile. And just let's get to September and see what his role in. Maybe he gets cut in August and then somebody else picks him up. Somebody gets hurt and we get to see it look like Dameon Pierce again.
Yeah.
I thought it was like him and Isaiah Pacheco were 2 guys, and I had Pierce ahead. But it's a very risky profile, those day 3 or UDFA running backs who really increase their value in their rookie year. And I think the safest thing to do when you hit one of those lottery tickets is sell. And especially, and this was the difference, we talked about this on regular fantasy football today, especially when there's a coaching change. With James Robinson, when he it was a coaching change. Michael Carter, it was a coaching change. Dameon Pierce, it was a coaching change. Pacheco's coaching system stayed the same. That's why I have some hope that Kyron Williams is able to hold on to his role for at least another year in Los Angeles. The other 2 guys on the list, because we are not going to talk about Devin Singletary, obviously, Antonio Gibson and J.K. Dobbins. I love J.K. Dobbins. I don't know if he's J.K. Dobbins anymore.
That's my fear. There's too much injury concern with me with Dobbins to confidently roster him as anything higher than an RB3 or RB4 even.
When he got hurt, his manager was ready to spite drop him in my dynasty league and just sent out a message that said, first person that offers me a 4th round pick for J.K. Dobbins, he's yours. And I offered a 4th round pick and took him. And again, let's see what he looks like in September.
Okay.
And then Antonio Gibson, do you have any hope? Is he a Dameon Pierce territory?
Let's not go that far. I've never been able to pan out with Antonio Gibson more than it's like a bye week replacement in redraft. Honestly, for dynasty, I don't know what the allure of holding on to him would be.
Yeah,
I mean, if you have him, you kind of have to sit on him. You can't really trade him for anything.
Well, I think we find out, like, he is someone, because he's not on a roster, that by the time we get to the NFL draft, he's either going to be on a new team or he's going to be sitting out there in running back free agent purgatory. And so if he's on a new team, I can probably justify trying to hold him through that rookie draft. If he is a free agent in the NFL, I'm probably going to let him be a free agent in my dynasty league as well. Did I miss any pending free agents that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think you hit them all.
Every single one of them, Joey says. I bet somebody sends me an email and says differently, Joey Wright. Let's talk. Speaking of emails, I've got a couple. We're going to read. I've got 4, actually. So that'd be a few, right? Nope, 5. I think that's several. Devin asks us, if I do a startup Superflex dynasty, should there be limitations on how many quarterbacks you can keep year over year? This is a test, Joey.
Yeah. So that word limitations, I feel like if you're putting limitations on a position, you're limiting strategy in the league. And for me, that doesn't sound like a whole lot of fun.
Right.
If I go into a startup dynasty league, one of my coworkers at Footballguys, Dave Kluge, he loves to take 3 or 4 quarterbacks in a dynasty
Sounds just
startup.
like Dave. Sounds just like Dave.
Yeah, I tried to act like, did my hair like him? No. For the reason that the quarterback value will never be higher than on dynasty startup day. So somebody like Baker Mayfield that he got as his third or fourth quarterback, he can flip him at the end of the season for a Devonta Smith to that team that maybe needs a quarterback with injuries going on. So limiting that quarterback would take away that strategy and a few other strategies, and I'm just not a big fan of that.
I played in yes.
Good.
No.
If you are going to have limitations,
I have no buts here.
Oh, no. But if you are going to have limitations, that needs to be in your constitution year one.
So that way, cool people like Joey and I can say, oh, that doesn't look fun. Yeah. We're not going to play in that league. Exactly. No, I played in the first league in a long time that had limitations. It was a 10-team Superflex redraft league this past year run by someone at CBS. I think I finished in last place. And it limited you to 3 quarterbacks. And it drove me absolutely crazy. And I did not enjoy it. And sure, it was just because of the quarterback rule, not because I finished. And last, Dan has been offered Justin Jefferson for Travis Etienne and a late 2024 first. Dan, I'm sorry that I waited a couple of days to get to this email. I hope that the person has not come to their senses yet. Joey, we're sprinting to accept this deal, correct?
Oh, 100%. And I love all the context you gave here. Like, it is pretty much a, go ahead and get an accept. You got Justin Jefferson. Yeah. But you gave us that context of having Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker as your running backs. That's good depth. You also have Javonte and Pacheco. But combining Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, good luck trying to take this team out. Like, I love this trade for you.
So Matt has got a grade the trade. He's not asking for our approval. He's already done the trade. It is a 12-team Superflex. Start 3 running backs and 4 wide receivers, which is pretty weird. And then he says standard scoring, which I think means non-PPR, which is absolutely not standard anymore in any way, shape, fashion, or form. But we're going to assume that's what he means. I don't know what that means for the passing touchdowns for quarterbacks, but he traded Josh Allen and Breece Hall. Hall is my number 2 running back. Allen is my number 1 quarterback. So you better have got a Hall, Matt. Mm-hmm. He received Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, and Jonathan Taylor. Is that enough, Joey?
I think it's like a win-win trade for both sides. I think it's for that many, the 3 running backs and 4 wide receivers, I assume there's probably some flexes involved. Getting that much depth, and while it's only 3 players, I do like that, but it's just kind of like a win-win, like a B trade for me.
Yeah, I think I know this is one where the trade chart's going to love it because I said Allen was my number 1 quarterback. Hurts is easily a top 3 quarterback. I said Hall was my number 2 running back. Taylor's easily a top 4 running back. And so the cherry on top is you get A.J. Brown. That is a very nice cherry, even if you don't really like cherries. Everybody in the chat's agreeing with us on the positional limits, and I really appreciate that. Thank you guys for the support.
What do you expect?
Good, very smart. Probably because they saw you were on the show, all the smart people came. Kevin says he has the first 2 picks in his Superflex rookie draft. He already has Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, and Tua. And so, rightly, the other fantasy managers in his league are starting to sniff around. What does it take to get up to 1 or 2? He wants to know, like, he's kind of, it sounds like, I mean, you got the first 2 picks. We're in rebuild mode here for sure. Is it absolutely crazy to start with Marvin Harrison and Neighbors? What are your thoughts on if you like taking those positional needs, or are you trying to trade down to 3 or 4 and still get them?
I think Marvin Harrison Jr. at 1, I don't think that's crazy at all. 101. I've seen it happen a lot in Superflex even. So I don't think you're crazy to do that. And if you want the assurance that you're going to get Neighbor at 102, you can do it. I don't think you need to. I think Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels will go in the top 3 picks. So I think you could trade back to 4 and maybe get a little bit of depth, but you're in a really good position too, where you've got 3 valuable quarterbacks, I would say. So maybe you could, you mentioned what other strategies could you go with? Maybe you shop a Tua and maybe get Devonta Smith or Chris Olave. Like, I would kind of just open your options up and look at all angles of this. I'm keeping the 101 to get Marvin Harrison. Like, that's a no-brainer. Right. But that 102, like, I would kind of play with it. Shop your quarterbacks around. See what other wide receiver you could get where Neighbors might not be that much of a need for you.
At the very least, can you see if the team that has 3, like he's probably got 3 for a reason. He might not have been paying that much of attention. Maybe he doesn't know you have 1 and 2. Can you see if you can move down from 1 to 3 and pick something up and he drafts a quarterback and then you still get the 2 guys you want anyway?
Absolutely. And it's also about what the teams that you're trading to need. If you know they need a quarterback, you're minimizing your risk that something's going to happen at that 3 or 4 pick.
Tim wrote to us, and he's got a 10-team half PPR, 4-point per passing touchdown. Thank you again. I agree with Joey. Give us the context. It's a super flex dynasty league. He traded Kyle Pitts and the 202 for Kyler Murray and the 308. And I feel like this is one where it's like there's a wide range of opinions right now on both Kyle Pitts and Kyler Murray. And so a lot of different people to answer this question in different ways. Just first off, Pitts and 202 for Murray and 308. Do you like it?
There's another part to his question, which makes me like this a lot.
Okay.
And it's when he said, and I have Sam Laporta at tight end. Like when I heard that, I'm like, okay, I'm totally fine acquiring Kyler Murray. Like that's where I am with Laporta. If you've got Laporta, I don't feel the need to necessarily carry another tight end, especially of Kyle Pitts level. Get your pieces.
Like even in a super flex league, there was definitely a time where Kyle Pitts was more highly valued than Kyler Murray. Pitts was arguably the 101 in his rookie draft, but he's fallen far enough. It would be really interesting because the thing is, he says he has Fields and Lamar at quarterback. And so I wonder how he's going to feel about this if Justin Fields is traded to the Atlanta Falcons and paired up with Kyle Pitts.
I think he's in a good position if he makes the trade, though, because the season doesn't start tomorrow. He's not making this trade with his back against the wall. He can shop Fields and maybe Lamar. It would be a lot for me to give up Lamar, but I'm pretty confident in Kyler Murray going into next year with what Arizona looks like they're going to be adding him with Trey McBride. Like
Matthew's been active in the chat here, Joey. We're going to reward him.
Cool.
He is wanting to know a reasonable wide receiver target. And I didn't give you any time to prep this one, so it's just for Pickens and Tank Dell.
Put it back up again. So Pickens and Tank Dell.
Yes,
Tank Dell, you're going to have to give up a lot for.
No, he wants to. I think he wants to trade Tank Dell and Pickens away. Sorry, I should have put it back up. But
if you are sending Pickens and Tank Dell away, I'm shooting for one of those elite guys. Maybe not Jefferson or Chase, but you might be able to get Amon or St. Brown. Like if they really like Tank Dell that much. Yeah, Amon St. Brown was where I would start.
Just for reference, Matthew, I've got, and I'm updating the trade chart this week as well. I just updated wide receiver dynasty rankings right before the show, so this is hot off the press. It's not even published yet. Tank Dell is my number 13 wide receiver in dynasty, and it looks like we've got George Pickens at 25. And they've got a combined trade value of about 800 points. Looking at last, I'm just pull up the trade chart from, that was Puka or AJ Brown range.
So okay,
but yes, I agree with you. You're not getting Jefferson or Chase. I don't think you're getting Lamb either. But anybody else is in play. If the person really likes Tank Dell and George Pickens.
Who's your wide receiver 4 in Dynasty, Heath? It's
Amon St. Brown.
Okay.
And me as well. I wouldn't trade. And actually, Matthew just said he already has Amon-Ra. So,
congratulations. Yeah, AJ Brown. That's a good range.
Yeah, AJ.
I don't know, honestly. Good.
Garrett Wilson, maybe.
Yeah, Garrett Wilson. Right. And honestly, with Rodgers coming back, if he has what people are expecting to be a good season, you could be buying him kind of low.
Right. Joey, thank you so much for being here. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I enjoyed talking to you in Las Vegas as well. This was a different kind of talk.
Yeah, it was very nice not to be pigeonholed and attacked every 5 minutes. When I turn my back, Heath comes up on me.
That was only night one. I don't think
this is true. Night
I did not put you in the pigeonhole after that.
I did wear my t-shirt for you today.
Actually, I just thought that you might be a little bit bruised in the shoulder area, and so I was giving you the day off. Tell everybody once again where they can find you, and thanks for being here.
Oh, no, thank you, Heath. Yeah, you can find me over at Football Guys. Like I mentioned, Sunday morning live. We got the rookie draft guide. You can also find me on Thursdays at 3:00 on the Front Yard Fantasy Game Show. Having a great time with those guys as usual. But most of my work you'll see this season will be over at Football Guys. Hop in the Discord. We're doing a brand new a revamp of it on Friday. We're going to launch it out there. A lot more organized. Tons of AMAs. We got a March Madness contest coming up this year. Lots of fun stuff at Football Guys.
Thank you, Joey. Thank you for everybody who followed along. Thank you for everybody who's listening to the podcast. We will talk to you next Tuesday.